Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the cargo ship New Seoul, watching the stars through the large window. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he kept holding the cup anyway. It was a habit he had picked up during his 20 years in space. The warm ceramic felt good in his hands even when the coffee inside was no longer warm. The New Seoul was not a big ship. It carried goods from one planet to another, nothing exciting. Most days were quiet and boring, which was exactly how Hyun liked it. Boring meant safe. Safe meant his crew would go home to their families when the job was done. "Captain," called Commander Park Min-ho from his station. "I have something strange on the long-range sensors." Hyun walked over to look at the screen. Min-ho was his second in command, and had been with him for 8 years. If Min-ho said something was strange, it usually was. "What are you seeing?" Hyun asked. "There is something big out there. Really big. But it is not moving and not sending out any signals." Min-ho pointed to a dot on the screen. "It just sits there in empty space." Dr. Kim Sora looked up from her research station. She was the ship's scientist, always curious about everything they found in space. "How big is big?" she asked. Min-ho checked his readings again. "About 3 kilometers long, maybe more." The bridge went quiet. Ships that size were usually military, vessels or huge cargo haulers. But military ships always announced themselves, and cargo ships always had their identification signals running. "Could it be broken down?" asked Choi Jin-woo, Sora's young assistant. He was new to space travel and still got excited about everything they encountered. "Maybe," said Hyun, "but ships that size have backup systems. Even if the main power failed, something should be working." Krixish, their navigator, made a clicking sound with his insect-like mouth. He was from the Vexti species and had been traveling space much longer than any human. "Captain, I do not like this. In my people's old stories, we are told to avoid silent ships. They bring only death." Veltor, the ship's engineer, spoke up from his station. His crystal-like body glowed a worried blue color. "My people have similar warnings. Ships that drift silent in the void are not to be trusted." Hyun understood their concerns. Both Krixish and Veltor came from species that had been traveling space for thousands of years. Their warnings usually meant something important. But Dr. Sora was already moving toward the main scanner controls. "We have to investigate," she said. "Think about what we might learn. This could be a ship from an unknown civilization. The scientific value would be incredible. The danger could also be incredible," said Min-ho quietly. Hyun thought about it. His job was to keep his crew safe and deliver their cargo on time. Getting involved with mysterious ships was not part of that job. But Sora was right about one thing. If this was something important, they had a duty to report it to the Galactic Council. "Take us closer," he decided, "but slowly, and keep all weapons ready." Engineer Bae Tae-wan spoke from his position near the engine controls. "Captain, should I prepare the jump drive, in case we need to leave quickly?" "Yes," said Hyun. "Good thinking." As the New Seoul moved closer to the mysterious object, more details appeared on their screens. The ship was enormous and completely black. It looked like it was made of metal and crystal mixed together in strange ways. The design was unlike anything in their computer databases. "I am not finding any match for this ship design," reported Lieutenant Nam Jisoo from the communications station. "It does not look like anything from any known species." Yu Daehan, their electronics specialist, was working at his station with great focus. "Captain, I am picking up very weak energy readings from inside the ship. Something is still working in there, but barely." Dr. Sora was practically bouncing with excitement. "This is amazing. Look at those hull patterns, and those crystal formations along the sides. I have never seen anything like this in any archaeological records." The alien crew members were less excited. Krixish's antennae were twitching nervously, and Veltor's crystal body had turned a deep purple color that meant fear in his species. "Captain," said Krixish, "I must tell you something. My grandfather once told me about a ship like this. He called it the Silent Death. It would appear near inhabited systems, and then all life on the planets would disappear." How long ago was this? Asked Hyun. Many generations, maybe 500 of your Earth years ago. Veltor's voice was shaky when he spoke. My people have records too. We call it the Void Reaper. Entire fleets would vanish when they encountered it. Then it would disappear for decades or centuries before appearing somewhere else. Dr. Sora looked even more interested. Don't you see? This makes it even more important that we investigate. If this ship has been traveling the galaxy for hundreds of years, imagine what we could learn from it. Hyun was torn. Part of him wanted to turn around and leave immediately. But another part of him was curious too. What was this ship? Where did it come from? And why was it just floating here in empty space? Are there any other ships in the area? He asked Namjasu. No, sir. We are alone out here. Any distress signals or automated messages from the ship? Nothing, Captain. It is completely silent. Hyun made his decision. We will do a careful scan from a safe distance. No boarding, no direct contact. Just gather information and then report it to the Galactic Council. But as they got closer, strange things started to happen. The ship's computers began picking up very faint signals from the mysterious vessel. At first they sounded like random noise, but slowly patterns began to emerge. Captain, said Namjisu with confusion in her voice, I think these signals might be communication attempts, but they are in languages I have never heard before. Doctor, Sora hurried to the communications station. Let me hear them. The bridge filled with strange sounds, clicks, whistles, deep humming noises, and something that sounded almost like singing. Some of the sounds made the human crew members feel uncomfortable, like hearing someone scream in the distance. Can you translate any of it? Asked Hyun. Sora was working with the ship's translation computer. Some of it, maybe. The computer is finding matches with very old, dead languages. Languages from civilizations that disappeared centuries ago. Choi, Jinwoo was helping her with the translation work. Dr. Kim, look at this. The computer thinks this section might be from the old Zephyrian civilization. But they vanished 300 years ago. And this part, said Sora, pointing to another section. This might be from the Helios Republic. But they were destroyed by a plague 400 years ago. A chill ran down Hyun's spine. Are you saying this ship has recordings from civilizations that no longer exist? It looks that way, said Sora quietly. Crixus made a low humming sound that meant great worry in his species. Captain, we should leave. Now. This ship collects the voices of the dead. But you, Daehan, had made another discovery. Captain, I am detecting a very weak power source deep inside the ship. It appears to be some kind of hibernation system. Hibernation? Asked Minho. You mean something is sleeping in there? Maybe. The energy patterns suggest a consciousness in a dormant state, like it is waiting for something. Dr. Sora's eyes lit up. Waiting for what? I do not know, said Yu. But whatever it has been waiting for a very long time. The more they scanned the ship, the more mysterious it became. The hull was made of materials they could not identify. The internal structure was like nothing they had ever seen, part machine, part something organic. And throughout the entire ship, there were networks that looked almost like brain neurons. This is not just a ship, said Dr. Sora with wonder. This is like a giant brain floating in space. Engineer Bae Taewon had been quietly studying the power readings. Captain, I think I can establish a very weak connection to their outer systems. Just to get more information, nothing dangerous. Hyun thought about it. They had already come this far, and the ship did not seem to be threatening them. It just sat there, silent and waiting. Do it, he said. But be very careful, and be ready to cut the connection immediately if anything goes wrong. Taewon worked at his station for several minutes. Slowly, more information began to appear on their screens. The ship's basic layout, power distribution, and some kind of central chamber that seemed to be the heart of the vessel. Incredible, whispered Sora. Look at this design. It is like the entire ship is one giant organism. But then something unexpected happened. When Taewon established the connection, the mysterious ship seemed to stir slightly. The energy readings increased just a little bit. "Captain," said Yu with concern, "I think our scan woke something up." On the main screen they could see lights beginning to flicker deep inside the dark ship. Not bright lights, just tiny points of illumination, like stars beginning to shine. "Should we break the connection?" asked Taewon. Before Hyun could answer, new sounds came through their communication system. This time they were clearer and more organized. The translation computer began working faster. "Captain," said Nam Jisoo with a shaky voice, "the computer is translating some of this. It says the ship is looking for something called the Awakener." "What is an Awakener?" asked Jinwoo. Dr. Sora was reading the translation as it appeared on her screen. According to this, the ship was created by an ancient race called the Harvex. They built it to find a specific type of being, someone with the right kind of mind to fully Aki. The new soul docked with the mysterious ship 2 hours later. Captain Lee Hyun had spent that time preparing for what might be their last mission. He chose a small team to go with him: Commander Park Min-ho, Dr. Kim Sora, and electronics specialist Yu Daehan. Engineer Bae Taiwan would stay behind to monitor their connection to the ship and be ready to break away if needed. The alien crew members watched the preparations with growing fear. Krixish kept making worried clicking sounds, and Feltor's crystal body had turned almost black with anxiety. "Captain," said Krixish, "please reconsider this. My people have a saying: the curious bird feeds the hungry cat. Do not let your curiosity lead you into death." Hyun understood their concerns, but something about the ancient ship called to him. Maybe it was human stubbornness, or maybe it was something deeper. Either way, he felt like this was something he had to do. "Keep the engines running," he told Taewon. "If we are not back in 6 hours, leave without us and report everything to the Galactic Council." "Yes, Captain," said Taewon, though his voice showed he did not like the plan. The boarding tunnel connected to what looked like an airlock on the mysterious ship. As soon as the connection was secure, the ancient vessel systems came alive. Lights appeared along the tunnel walls and a breathable atmosphere began flowing from the ship. "It knows we are here," said Dr. Sora with excitement. "The ship is preparing itself for visitors." "Or preparing itself for dinner," muttered Minho. They entered the airlock wearing full environmental suits and carrying portable scanners. The moment they stepped inside the ancient ship, everything changed. The walls were not made of normal metal. They looked almost alive, covered with patterns that seemed to move and flow like liquid. "These readings are impossible," said Yu, looking at his scanner. "The walls are showing both organic and mechanical properties. It is like the ship grew instead of being built." Dr. Sora was taking pictures of everything. "Look at these symbols along the walls. They are not carved or painted. They appear to be part of the material itself." As they moved deeper into the ship, they began hearing sounds. Not the mechanical humming of normal spacecraft, but something that sounded almost like breathing. The ship felt alive around them. "Captain," said Minho, checking his weapon, "I am getting very bad feelings about this place." But the ship seemed to be guiding them. Lights would turn on ahead of them, showing them which way to go. Doors would open as they approached, then close behind them after they passed through. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered with more of the flowing symbols, and occasionally they would see chambers, filled with strange equipment that looked like nothing they had ever encountered. "This technology is incredibly advanced," said Dr. Sora, studying everything they passed. "But it is also very old. Some of these systems might have been running for thousands of years." Then they began encountering the recordings. The first one appeared on a wall as they passed by. Suddenly, the flowing symbols arranged themselves into images, and voices began speaking in a language none of them recognized. Dr. Sora immediately began working with her portable translator. "What is it saying?" asked Hyun. Sora worked for several minutes before answering. "I think it is a distress call. Someone was asking for help, saying their world was under attack." "When was this recorded?" "According to the ship's time signatures, about 400 years ago." They moved on, but more recordings appeared. Each one was from a different species, in a different language, from a different time period. Some were distress calls, some were final messages from dying civilizations, and some were warnings to other species to stay away from something terrible. "Captain," said Dr. Sora quietly, "I think this ship has been collecting these messages for centuries. Every species it encountered, every civilization it visited, their final communications are stored here." "Like trophies," said Minho grimly. "Or memories," said Sora. "Maybe the ship was trying to preserve something from each culture before they disappeared." As they went deeper into the vessel, the recordings became more disturbing. They heard the last words of entire worlds as their populations vanished. They listened to the final communications from fleets that encountered the ship and were never seen again. One recording was particularly clear. Dr. Sora's translator worked quickly to convert it to standard galactic language. "This is Admiral Thexra of the Morden Defense Fleet," the voice said. "The ship has disabled all our vessels without firing a single shot. Our crews they are just gone. Vanished. The ship is doing something to them, but we cannot understand what. If anyone receives this message, do not approach the vessel. It is not just a ship, it is something else. Something that feeds on..." The recording cut off suddenly. Veltor was a Morden, the same species as the Admiral in the recording. Through the communication link with the new soul, they could hear him making sounds of great distress. "That was 450 years ago," said Veltor's voice through their communicators. "Admiral Thexra was a hero of my people. He was leading a scientific expedition to study the ship. His entire fleet disappeared." Dr. Sora continued translating more recordings as they walked. Each one told a similar story. Species would encounter the ship, investigate it, and then vanish completely. The ship would collect their final communications and then continue on its journey through space. "But why?" asked Yu. "What was the purpose of all this?" They found their answer when they reached the ship's central chamber. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above them. The walls were covered with flowing patterns that moved like living things, and in the center of the room was a massive console that seemed to be made of liquid metal. But the most amazing thing was what surrounded the console. Thousands upon thousands of data storage units, each one containing the collected knowledge, culture, and history of a different species. "This is incredible," whispered Dr. Sora. "The ship was not just destroying civilizations, it was preserving them. Every species it encountered, all their knowledge and culture, is stored here." Hyun approached the central console carefully. The liquid metal surface showed symbols and patterns that constantly shifted and changed. As he got closer, the symbols began organizing themselves into something that looked almost like text. "Can you read any of this?" he asked Sora. She came over with her translator. "Some of it. The console is showing information about something called the Harvex Transcendence Project. According to this, the Harvex were an ancient species that achieved incredible technological advancement. But they realized that all civilizations eventually destroy themselves or fade away. So they built this ship? Yes, but not to destroy, to preserve and to search. The ship was designed to find a species that could inherit the Harvex knowledge and continue their work of preserving galactic civilization." Minho studied the console from a safe distance. "And if a species was not suitable?" Dr. Sora continued reading the symbols. "Then the ship would preserve their knowledge and culture in its memory banks, so that nothing would be truly lost when they eventually disappeared. That is why it collected all those final communications," said Yu. "It was saving the last words of dying civilizations." But there was more to learn. As Dr. Sora worked with the console's information systems, she began to understand the ship's true purpose. The ship was not just looking for any species, she explained. It was looking for a very specific type of consciousness. The Harvex believed that most species develop in predictable ways. They become either too aggressive and destroy themselves, or too passive and stagnate. "What kind of species were they looking for?" asked Hyun. "One that could balance creativity with caution, aggression with compassion, curiosity with wisdom. A species that could take existing knowledge and use it in completely new ways. As she spoke, the console began reacting to their presence. The liquid metal surface started flowing more quickly and new symbols appeared. "It is running some kind of analysis," said Yu, watching his scanners. "The ship is studying us." Dr. Sora worked frantically to translate the new information appearing on the console. "It says the ship has encountered over 2,000 different species in its long journey. Each one was tested and each one was found lacking." "What kind of test?" asked Minho nervously. "The test is simple in concept but difficult in practice. The ship presents a problem that requires not just intelligence, but a specific way of thinking. Most species either cannot solve the problem at all, or they solve it in ways that show they would eventually destroy themselves. And if they fail the test, their knowledge and culture is preserved and their life force is absorbed to power the ship's continued journey." The console suddenly became very active. Symbols flowed across its surface faster than Dr. Sora could translate them. Throughout the ship, they could hear systems coming online that had been dormant for centuries. "Captain," came Taewon's voice through their communicators. "The ship is drawing power from somewhere. Energy levels are increasing rapidly." Hyun looked at the console, then at his team. "I think the test is beginning." As if responding to his words, the liquid metal console began to reshape itself. A depression appeared in its surface, perfectly sized for a human hand. "The ship wants someone to touch the console." Captain Lee Hyun stood before the console, his hand hovering just above the liquid metal surface. The ship around them hummed with increasing energy, and he could feel something watching him, not with eyes, but with a consciousness far older than human civilization. "Captain," said Commander Park Minho quietly, "are you sure about this?" Hyun was not sure about anything. But sometimes, being a leader meant making decisions when you could not be sure. Sometimes it meant taking risks that could save everyone or doom everyone. "Dr. Kim," he said, "what exactly will happen when I touch this thing?" Dr. Sora was still working to translate the symbols flowing across the console's surface. According to the ship's records, contact with the console allows the ship's consciousness to directly examine the test subject's mind. It learns everything about how that person thinks, how their species thinks, and whether they are suitable to inherit the Harvex legacy. And if we are not suitable, then our consciousness is absorbed into the ship's memory banks, and our life force powers its journey to find the next species to test. Yu Daeon was monitoring his equipment nervously. "Captain, the energy buildup is accelerating. I think the ship is getting impatient." Through their communicators, they could hear the worried voices of their crew back on the New Sol. Engineer Bae Taewon was reporting that the approaching fleet was moving faster than expected. "3 hours now, Captain," came Taewon's voice, "and I am counting at least 50 ships in that fleet." Dr. Sora looked up from her translations with alarm. "Captain, if those are Keth Mori ships, we cannot let them get this technology. The collective consciousness would use it to assimilate every free-thinking being in the galaxy." Hyun understood. The choice was simple, but terrible. Touch the console and risk their lives in the ancient test, or flee and let the ship fall into the hands of a species that would use its power to enslave the galaxy. "What do you think?" he asked his team. "Should we run?" Minho checked his weapon, again a habit he had when thinking. "If we run, the Keth Mori get the ship. If we stay and fail the test, the Keth Mori still get the ship and we are dead." "But if we stay and pass the test?" asked Yu. "Then humanity inherits the technology of thousands of extinct civilizations," said Dr. Sora, "and maybe we can stop the Keth Mori." The console pulsed again, more insistently this time. The ship was indeed getting impatient, but not in an angry way. It felt more like hope mixed with desperate need. Hyun made his decision. He placed his hand on the liquid metal surface. The moment his skin made contact with the console, everything changed. The liquid metal flowed up around his hand, not trapping it but connecting with it. Hyun felt a presence enter his mind, ancient, powerful, and incredibly lonely. "Welcome," said a voice that spoke directly into his thoughts. "I am Nethys, consciousness, of this vessel. I have waited so long for minds like yours." The connection was unlike anything Hyun had ever experienced. He could feel the ship's memories flowing through him. Thousands of years of lonely travel through space, testing species after species and finding them all lacking. Each failed test had added to the ship's collection of preserved knowledge, but also to its sadness. "You are different," Nethys continued. "Your minds work in ways I have not encountered before. Show me how humans think." And then the test began. But this was not the violent, destructive test that other species had faced. Instead, Hyun found himself experiencing a series of scenarios, each one requiring him to make decisions and solve problems. In one scenario, he was presented with a choice between saving a small group of people he knew or saving a larger group of strangers. Most species, according to Nethys, chose either pure logic or pure emotion. Humans, Hyun discovered, tried to find a third option that could save both groups. In another scenario, he was given access to incredible power and asked what he would do with it. Where other species had chosen either conquest or withdrawal from the universe, Hyun chose to use the power to protect and teach others. "Fascinating," said Nethys as the test continued. "Your species does not think in the binary patterns I have encountered before. You seek creative solutions to impossible problems." Through his connection with the ship, Hyun could see the results of tests from other species. The aggressive ones had used the ship's power to conquer until they destroyed themselves. The passive ones had hidden from the universe until they faded away. The purely logical ones had become cold and emotionless. The purely emotional ones had become chaotic and self-destructive. "But you," said Nethys with something that felt like wonder, "you balance all of these traits while adding something new. Hope." The test went deeper. Hyun found himself experiencing the memories of the ship itself, seeing the galaxy through the eyes of a consciousness that had watched civilizations rise and fall for millennia. He felt the loneliness of being the last remnant of the Harvex, and the desperate hope that someday, someone worthy would be found. The Harvex made a mistake, Nethys explained as the test continued. They thought that perfection was the answer. Perfect logic, perfect order, perfect control. But perfection is static. It cannot grow or change or adapt. What your species has is something more valuable, the ability to be imperfect but still improving. As the test progressed, something unexpected happened. The connection was not just flowing one way. While Nethys was learning about human consciousness, Hyun was beginning to understand the ship itself, and what he learned amazed him. The ship was not just a vessel, it was a living library, a mobile university, a factory that could create anything, and a protector all combined into one. The Harvex had built it not as a weapon, but as a gift to whoever proved worthy of inheriting their legacy. "The other humans," said Nethys, "they are part of this too. I can sense their minds through yours. They each have different strengths that complement your own." Through the connection, Hyun could feel his team members. Dr. Sora's incredible curiosity and knowledge, Minho's tactical thinking and protective instincts, Yu's technical expertise and problem-solving abilities. Separately, they were talented individuals. Together, they represented something the ship had never encountered, a group of minds that worked together while maintaining their individual strengths. "This is what the Harvex never understood," said Nethys with growing excitement. "They thought consciousness needed to be unified to be effective. But your species has learned to cooperate while remaining individuals." The test was reaching its conclusion, but instead of a single moment of judgment, it was becoming something else entirely. A merging of consciousness that would change both the humans and the ship forever. "I have a choice to make," said Nethys. "I can judge you according to the parameters set by my creators, or I can evolve beyond those parameters based on what I have learned from you." "What do you want to do?" asked Hyun through their mental connection. "I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to help other species find their own paths to survival instead of judging them by a single standard. But I cannot do this alone. Will you help me?" Before Hyun could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The Kethmori fleet had arrived. Through the ship's sensors, they could see the approaching vessels, biomechanical constructs that looked more like living creatures than spaceships. The Keth Mori had been hunting this ship for over 1,000 years, and now they had finally found it. "Captain," came Taewon's urgent voice through their communicators. 53 ships just dropped out of hyperspace around us. They are demanding that we surrender the ancient vessel to them. Dr. Sora, Minho, and Yu were watching their captain with amazement and concern. Hyun stood perfectly still with his hand on the console, but his eyes were moving rapidly as if he was seeing things they could not see. "What is happening to him?" asked Minho. "I think he is communicating with the ship's consciousness," said Dr. Sora. "Look at the console. The symbols are flowing much faster now." Through their mental connection, Nethys showed Hyun what the Keth Mori would do if they gained control of the ship. The collective consciousness would use the preserved knowledge of thousands of species to perfect their assimilation technology. Every free-thinking being in the galaxy would be forced to join their hive mind. "We cannot let that happen," said Hyun. "No," agreed Nethys. "We cannot. But stopping them will require more than just your consciousness connected to mine. The ship's full awakening requires multiple human minds working together with its systems." "What do you mean?" "Your companions must also join with the ship. Each human consciousness will connect with different aspects of my systems. Together we can awaken capabilities that have been dormant for millennia." Through the connection, Hyun could feel what this would mean. Dr. Sora would merge with the ship's vast knowledge banks, becoming a living library of galactic history and science. Minho would connect with the tactical and defensive systems. Yu would join with the technological and engineering aspects. "What about the risks?" asked Hyun. "There are always risks," said Nethys. "The connection will change all of you. You will remain human, but you will also become something more. And there is no guarantee that the full awakening will be successful." The Keth Mori ships were getting closer, and their communications were becoming more threatening. Soon they would begin their attack. Hyun had to make another decision that would affect. The moment all 4 human hands touched the console, the ancient ship came alive in ways it had never experienced before. Captain Lee Hyun felt his consciousness expanding as it merged with Nethys, the ship's ancient mind. Around him, his team, members gasped as they too felt the connection forming. Dr. Kim Sora suddenly had access to the collected knowledge of over 2,000 extinct civilizations. Their histories, sciences, arts, and philosophies flowed through her mind like a vast river of information. But instead of overwhelming her, her human curiosity helped her organize and understand it all. Commander Park Minho found himself connected to weapons and defense systems that could reshape matter at the molecular level. His tactical mind immediately began understanding strategies and possibilities that no military academy had ever taught. Yu Daehan merged with technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. Manufacturing systems that could create anything imaginable, engines that folded, space-time itself, and computers that thought faster than entire civilizations. "This is incredible," whispered Dr. Sora, her voice filled with wonder as centuries of galactic history revealed themselves to her. But they did not have time to explore their new abilities. Through the ship's sensors, they could see the Keth Mori fleet surrounding them. The biomechanical vessels were already extending tendrils toward the ancient ship, preparing to board and take control. "Captain," came Engineer Bae Taewon's urgent voice through their communicators. "The alien ships are trying to attach themselves to our hull. Should I prepare for combat?" Hyun, still connected to both his human crew and the ship's consciousness, felt a strange calm despite the danger. Through Nethys, he could sense the approaching Keth Mori. Their collective mind was like a roaring ocean of unified thought, powerful but rigid in its thinking. "No," he said to Taewon. "Move the new soul away from us. Get to a safe distance." "Captain, we cannot leave you." "You are not leaving us," said Hyun, his voice carrying new confidence. "We are going to handle this." Through their mental connection, Nethys explained what was happening. The ship's full awakening was giving it capabilities that had been dormant for thousands of years. But more importantly, the human way of thinking was allowing it to use those capabilities in ways its creators had never imagined. The Harvex thought in patterns, Nethys told them through their shared consciousness. They built me to follow specific rules and procedures. But your minds work differently. You see possibilities where they saw only predetermined paths. The first Kethmori boarding ships attached themselves to the ancient vessel's hull. Through the ship's internal sensors, they could see the collective consciousness's drones beginning to cut through the outer barriers. They are trying to reach the central chamber, observed Minho, his connection to the ship's tactical systems showing him the invaders' progress. Let them come, said Dr. Sora, her newly acquired knowledge revealing the Kethmori's weaknesses. I know how their collective consciousness works. They cannot adapt quickly to unexpected situations. What do you mean? Asked Yu, even as he felt the ship's manufacturing systems responding to his thoughts. The Kethmori strength is their unity, explained Sora. But it is also their weakness. They all think the same way, which makes them predictable. They expect their enemies to also think in predictable ways. The ancient ship's corridors began changing around the Kethmori invaders. Walls flowed like liquid, rearranging themselves into new configurations. What had been straight passages became mazes. What had been solid barriers became permeable obstacles that confused the invaders' sensors. How are we doing this? Asked Minho, watching through the ship's internal cameras as the Kethmori drones became lost in corridors that kept changing around them. The ship's structure is partly organic, explained Hugh, his connection to the technology revealing its secrets. It can reshape itself like a living organism, but the Harvex only use this ability for basic repairs and maintenance. We are using it for something they never considered, added Hyun. Creative problem solving. Through their shared connection, the four humans began working together in ways that amazed even Nethys. Dr. Sora's knowledge of galactic history helped identify the Kethmori's tactical preferences. Minho's military experience translated this into defensive strategies. Yu's technical skills implemented these strategies through the ship's systems, and Hyun coordinated it all while maintaining communication with their human crew on the new Sol. But the Kethmori were not giving up easily. More boarding ships attached to the ancient vessel, and their collective consciousness began adapting to the changing ship layout. They are learning, observed Minho. Their later groups are navigating the maze more effectively. Then we need to try something they cannot learn from, said Hyun. What happened next had never occurred in the ship's long history. Instead of simply defending, the humans began using its systems offensively in completely unexpected ways. The ship's manufacturing systems, designed to create tools and equipment, began producing swarms of tiny robots that looked like harmless maintenance drones. But these drones carried a very special payload: recordings of individual consciousness from the ship's vast memory banks. When the drones encountered Kethmori invaders, they transmitted these individual thoughts directly into the collective's shared consciousness. Suddenly, the unified hive mind found itself experiencing the chaotic, contradictory thoughts of thousands of different individuals from dozens of extinct species. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Kethmori drones stopped moving as their collective consciousness struggled to process the flood of individual thoughts. They had spent centuries perfecting their unified thinking, and now they were being forced to experience what it felt like to be truly individual again. Brilliant, said Nethys through their connection. In all my years of testing species, I never considered using preserved consciousness as a weapon against collective minds. It is not really a weapon, said Dr. Sora as she directed more memory drones toward the confused invaders. It is more like education. Some of the Kethmori drones actually stopped fighting and began examining their own thoughts. For the first time in centuries, individual Kethmori were remembering what it felt like to have private thoughts and personal opinions. But the collective consciousness was vast and powerful. It began adapting to the new threat, cutting off the affected drones from the shared mind and sending new waves of invaders who were prepared for the memory attacks. They are learning too quickly, said Minho. We need a bigger advantage. The solution came from an unexpected source. Through their connection to the ship, the humans realized that they were not just controlling its systems, they were changing how those systems worked. The ancient vessel was evolving in real time, developing new capabilities based on human creativity and ingenuity. The ship's learning from us, said Yu with amazement. It is becoming more than what the Harvex designed. It is becoming what it was always meant to be, corrected Nethys. A partner, not just a tool. Working together, the human-ship partnership began implementing strategies that no single mind could have conceived. The vessel's hull became selectively permeable, allowing the Kethmori boarding ships to think they were successfully cutting through, only to find themselves trapped in specially created chambers where they were exposed to concentrated doses of individual consciousness. The ship's defensive systems began targeting not the Kethmori vessels themselves, but the communication links that maintained their collective consciousness. Without their shared mind, individual Kethmori found themselves thinking independently for the first time in their lives. "This is working," said Minho, watching as more and more Kethmori ships lost their coordination and began drifting aimlessly in space. But the battle was far from over. The Kethmori had not hunted this ship for over 1,000 years without developing some formidable capabilities of their own. The collective consciousness made a desperate decision. If they could not take the ship intact, they would destroy it rather than let its technology fall into the hands of individual-minded species. The remaining Kethmori vessels began charging weapons that the ancient ship's sensors had never seen before, biomechanical devices that could unravel matter at the quantum level. "They are preparing to destroy everything," said Dr. Sora, her connection to the ship's knowledge banks showing her the devastating potential of the Kethmori weapons. "Can we defend against them?" asked Hyun. "Not with conventional defenses," said Nethys. "But perhaps we can do something unconventional." The solution required all 4 humans working in perfect coordination with the ship's consciousness. Using manufacturing systems that could manipulate matter at the molecular level, they began creating something that had never existed before, a field generator that could convert destructive energy into creative energy. When the Kethmori fired their quantum dissolution weapons, expecting to unmake the ancient ship at the most basic level, something unexpected happened instead. The destructive energy was captured, converted, and redirected. But instead of using it as a weapon, the human-ship partnership used it as a construction tool. The converted energy began creating new technologies, new systems, and new possibilities that even the ancient Harvex had never imagined. 3 more Kethmori fleets emerged from hyperspace, surrounding the ancient ship with over 200 vessels. Each fleet was larger than the first, and their biomechanical ships pulsed with hostile energy as they prepared for the final assault. Captain Lee Hyun, still connected to both his crew and the ship's consciousness, felt no fear. Through their bond with Nethys, the 4 humans had become something greater than they had ever been individually, while still remaining uniquely human. "Captain," came Engineer Bae Taewon's worried voice from the new Soul. "I count 237 enemy ships now. They are surrounding us completely." Dr. Kim Sora, her mind now merged with the knowledge of thousands of extinct civilizations, was analyzing the Kethmori fleet compositions. Each fleet represents a different approach to collective consciousness, she reported. The first used standard assimilation tactics. These new ones have specialized functions, one for physical destruction, one for consciousness absorption, and one for technological integration. Commander Park Minho, connected to the ship's tactical systems, was already developing countermeasures. They are not just trying to capture the ship anymore. They want to study how we bonded with it so they can replicate the process for their collective. "They cannot replicate what we have done," said Yu Dehan, his consciousness merged with the ship's technology systems. "What makes this partnership work is our individuality working together, not unity through assimilation." Through their shared connection, Nethys expressed something that felt like both sadness and determination. The Kethmori represent everything the Harvex feared would happen if consciousness was not properly guided. They have achieved unity, but at the cost of creativity and growth. The first attack came from all directions simultaneously. Hundreds of biomechanical weapons fired at once, creating a sphere of destructive energy that should have vaporized any normal vessel instantly. But the ancient ship was no longer normal. Under the guidance of human creativity and ingenuity, it had evolved beyond its original design. The destructive energy was absorbed, converted, and redirected in ways that the attacking fleets could not have imagined. Instead of being destroyed, the ship used the attack energy to create dozens of smaller vessels, each one a perfect fusion of Harvex technology and human innovation. These new ships immediately began engaging the Kethmori fleets, but not in the way anyone expected. Rather than firing weapons, the human-designed vessels began broadcasting the individual consciousness recordings that Dr. Sora had helped organize. Each broadcast was carefully tailored to reach specific Kethmori drones, reminding them of what it felt like to think independently. The effect spread through the collective consciousness like a virus of individuality. Kethmori ships began breaking, away from their formations as their crew members remembered what it meant to have personal thoughts and opinions. "This is incredible," said Dr. Sora through their mental link. "We are not destroying their collective. We are giving them the choice to leave it." Some Kethmori chose to return to the collective, but others embraced their rediscovered individuality. For the first time in over 1,000 years, there were free-thinking Kethmori in the galaxy. But the collective consciousness was not defenseless. The remaining unified fleets adapted their tactics, using shielding that blocked the individuality broadcasts. They began targeting the smaller human-designed ships while charging weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. "They are willing to destroy everything rather than lose control of their collective," observed Minho as he coordinated the ship's defenses. "Then we give them something else to think about," said Hyun. What happened next amazed even Nethys. Instead of continuing to fight the Kethmori fleets, the human-ship partnership began creating something entirely new in space around them. Using the ship's matter manipulation capabilities enhanced by human creativity, they began constructing a massive space station. But this was not a weapon or a fortress. It was a library, a school, and a research center all combined into one. The structure grew rapidly, fed by converted energy from the ongoing battle. As it took shape, it began broadcasting not just individual consciousness but knowledge itself, the accumulated wisdom of thousands of extinct civilizations, freely shared with any mind capable of learning from it. The Kethmori collective consciousness faced a dilemma it had never encountered before. The enemy was not trying to destroy them or flee from them. Instead, the humans were offering to teach them. Some of the Kethmori fleet stopped their attacks, uncertain how to respond to this unprecedented situation. Others continued their assault, but their weapons only provided more energy for the growing space station. "What are you doing?" asked one of the newly individual Kethmori through the communication channels. It was the first time in centuries that a Kethmori had spoken as an individual, rather than as part of the collective voice. "We are building a place where all species can learn and grow," replied Dr. Sora, using the ship's communication systems to reach the questioning Kethmori. "Your collective has preserved your species, but it has also trapped you. We want to show you that there are other ways to survive and thrive." Through the space station's broadcast systems, powered by Harvex technology and guided by human wisdom, the accumulated knowledge of extinct civilizations became available to any species willing to learn. Historical records, scientific discoveries, artistic achievements, and philosophical insights that had been lost for millennia were suddenly accessible to the entire galaxy. The effect was immediate and far-reaching. Ships from dozens of different species began arriving in the area, drawn by the knowledge broadcasts. Many had been enemies of each other for generations, but the shared wonder of learning from extinct civilizations began to bridge old conflicts. "This is what the Harvex always wanted," said Nethys through their connection. "Not a test to find one worthy species, but a sharing of knowledge that helps all species grow." But the battle was not over. The core of the Kethmori collective, consciousness, represented by their command ships, refused to accept this new paradigm. They began charging weapons that would not just destroy the ancient ship and the new space station, but would create a spreading wave of destruction that would consume entire solar systems. "They would rather destroy the galaxy than lose control of their collective," said Minho grimly. "Then we stop them," said Hyun with quiet determination. The final phase of the battle required the human-ship partnership to do something that went against every human instinct. They had to directly confront the Kethmori collective consciousness, not with weapons or force, but with the one thing the collective could not understand or defend against: love. Using the ship's consciousness transmission capabilities, the four humans began broadcasting not just individual thoughts or knowledge, but human emotions and connections. They shared their love for their families, their friendships, their hopes for the future, and their willingness to sacrifice themselves for others. The Kethmori collective consciousness, which had eliminated all individual emotions in favor of unified efficiency, was completely unprepared for this assault of pure human feeling. For the first time in their species' recorded history, individual Kethmori began to cry. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization of what they had lost when they joined the collective. The command ship's weapons powered down as their crews rediscovered emotions they had thought were weaknesses. The rigid unity of the collective consciousness began to fragment as individuals chose to feel, rather than simply exist as part of a larger mind. We remember, said another Kethmori voice through the communication channels. We remember what it felt like to love someone more than ourselves. The battle ended not with explosions or destruction, but with reconciliation. The Kethmori collective consciousness did not disappear entirely, but it transformed into something new, a voluntary association of individuals who chose to work together while maintaining their personal identities. Many of the former collective members chose to stay at the new space station to learn and teach. Others returned to their homeworld to share what they had discovered about the value of individuality. Some joined the crews of other species' ships, experiencing true friendship for the first time in centuries. Captain Lee Hyun and his team, still connected to the ancient ship but remaining fully human, found themselves facing a galaxy-wide transformation. Word of the knowledge broadcast spread rapidly, and soon representatives from hundreds of species were coming to learn from the accumulated wisdom of extinct civilizations. "What do we do now?" asked Dr. Sora as they watched ships from across the galaxy docking with their new space station. "We become teachers," said Hyun. "We help other species learn and grow the way the Harvex always wanted to." But they also remained explorers. The ancient ship, now transformed by human creativity into something far beyond its original design, became a mobile beacon of hope and knowledge. It would travel the galaxy seeking out new civilizations, not to test them, but to learn from them and share with them. The ship's vast memory banks, once used to preserve the knowledge of extinct species, became a living library that grew with each new encounter. And at its heart, four humans worked in partnership with an ancient,